Let's take a look at college football 27 versus college football 26 side by side. We're going to mainly be looking at the visuals, some small details, and some player movement stuff. And I want to start with the weather first because this is one of the areas where you'll notice the biggest difference. So in college football 26 on the left, all they had was a rain option. That's it. Now on the right, you're seeing the light rain option for college football 27. Now we're going to switch over to the heavy rain option in college football 27. So there's multiple different rain options here versus just the regular one from 26. Now looking at the snow here, we have one snow option in 26, and then on the right, we're looking at the light snow option for 27. Now we're going to switch over to the heavy snow option in 27, which is actually lighter than just the regular snow in 26. However, we do have dynamic weather this year, which means we have dynamic snow and rain, which when you do dynamic snow, as you can see here on the right, you can actually get a lot heavier snow when you have the dynamic snow option. And you'll also notice that the snow will now build up on the players' bodies, whereas last year it would just clean no matter what. Now I mentioned the dynamic weather, so here's just an example of dynamic snow. For example, you can tell that it's cold, you can see the player's breath. Now a little bit later in the game, you can see the snow flurries are starting to fall. Nothing too crazy yet, but you'll see as we get later into the game, more and more plays later, you'll notice the snow is going to pick up more and more. And just from the beginning of the quarter to the end, look how much the snow has built up. And another nice part of this is you'll see the footprints and the body prints will now track in the snow, unlike last year, which is really nice. Let's take a look at some player likeness last year versus this year. So for some of the top end players, they definitely did a better job at making them look more realistic this year. There are a few players who some people feel that look worse this year. So I guess it all depends. They're not actual face scans, but they're just kind of trying to go off of what the player looks like, and they're using AI and machine learning and things like that. So just going to show a few before and after shots from last year and this year for some of the more highly rated players. Like I said, some you may feel look worse. I think most of them look better this year than last year, but there's always one or two that, maybe could look a little better that they could work on a little more, but just want to show you just a few different examples of what it's looking like. I do think overall across the board, the faces and the player likeness is getting better each year, but unless they actually start scanning players, which I don't think they're going to do for the college game because it's so many players, they're not going to exactly look perfect. And here's just a close-up on Malachi Tony's face just for a better example of what it's looking like last year versus this year. The graphics getting a little bit better, but nothing too crazy, nothing that noticeable. Now, an area that has been still getting a lot of updates are player intros, and one of the big ones is going to be Michigan versus Ohio State. You're going to now have more rivalry-style intros for certain teams. They're going to kind of chip and kind of talk trash to each other. It's really more noticeable with the Michigan-Ohio State one, but I think they're going to keep kind of building these out for more teams. But just the intros in general, they kind of continue to upgrade them every year. So what you saw last year, it's not going to be exactly like that this year. They add some more shots. They build them out more. They add some different crowd shots. Moving over here to Texas, you can see they've changed some stuff up, like with the band formation, the banners, and the crowd. Obviously, there's some shots that are still the same. There's some shots that they kind of show from different angles, but they're constantly, tweaking with these, adding a little more details to them. Like you'll see they have the mascot in the crowd now for a lot of teams, the banners in the crowds for a lot of teams, more band formations, different shots, different traditions. They're constantly building these out for teams. Even the big teams are adding on to them, so they're not just the same cut and dry entrance every single year. And they're really starting to do a good job with some of the smaller schools, like here with Charlotte. You could see adding their mascot, adding some more shots, adding some different things there. So, a lot of the teams in the game still maybe have more generic ones the last 2 years, and they're continuing to build those out more. So now when you go through the game, most schools have a pretty good unique entrance now. And they're still updating a lot of the night entrances for schools as well, adding more drone shows and pyro and light shows. Last year, they started introducing this for a number of teams, and they're starting to add more and more for some of the other schools this year as well. Now, when it comes to player movement, both of these games are pretty close in my opinion. Neither of them are quite as crazy as 25 was. I will say you can notice here, I do think this one's a little tighter. I think they tightened it back up more. I do also think that the juke move is just a tad bit better. I mean, it's nothing crazy. It's nothing that's going to jump off the screen at you. It's more something you feel when you play. But overall, I would say movement-wise, everything considered, both games are pretty close to one another. Now, they did do more work with throwing animations this year. They kind of started working on this more last year, but they're just adding more on this year. So you could see different throw styles for different QBs with lob passes, bullet passes on the run. So just going to show you a few examples of a few different quarterbacks here. Also, notice they're adding practice jerseys now. So you'll notice for a lot of teams, they have their practice uniforms versus having just their real in-game uniforms. So just a nice little touch, nice little detail that they added. But just noticing here that they're tweaking the throwing animations. I think these are starting starting to look a lot better. If you go back 2 years ago, the animations for quarterbacks look a ton better now than they did then, and they're just kind of continuing to build it out each year, make them a little better, so you can see, you know, there might not be crazy differences, but you'll notice it if you really look closely. You can see the way they're releasing the ball, the different motions that they have for bullets and lobs and things like that. Just wanted to show a few comparisons with some of the top QBs in the game so you can just kind of get a feel for what it's looking like here. Just makes it look a little more authentic. I think like once you see how players throw the ball, when that gets better, it starts to kind of jump off the screen at you. Here's a nice little throw in the run, just showing you what it's looking like this year versus last year. And another area that I really like is the wide receiver DB battles. They did a lot of different animations and stuff here, but one you'll notice is a lot of hand fighting versus just running stride for stride like they did last year. Now, one area that got a huge upgrade is coach likeness. They put the real coaches in last year, but they are night and day difference from last year to this year. I don't know what they did here because, again, I don't think they're scanning, but the coaches, I mean, you look at what they looked like last year versus this year, they actually look, most of them at least, like their real life self, whereas last year's version, I mean, it just was like something that could have roughly been based on the real coach, but you look at what they did here in 27, most of these look pretty much exactly like the actual coach this time around, which I think is a nice touch. I'm glad they put more detailing on the coaches because the coaches, unlike the players, are going to be around a lot longer, especially the big name guys. So want to get them looking right, and I think they really nailed that this year in 27. Take a look at the referees here. I really don't feel like there's much of a difference here. I would say they look just a tiny bit better in 27, but nothing too crazy. Just wanted to throw that in there. Crowd-wise, I don't really feel like there's much of a difference. The crowd doesn't really change too much year to year from what I've noticed when I do these videos. I will say that what they're wearing in the crowd looks a little bit more varied last year versus this year, but overall, I mean, graphically, how they move, they look about the same. And the same goes for the sidelines. They have some real players. They have a lot of just generic players that don't even look like real humans half the time. But I will say it does appear that the sideline this year looks a little more active, and at least how they jump around and move and things like that, or at least in the clips that I recorded. But just wanted to kind of be thorough here and show the side by side. Another area they did a lot of work with is equipment, especially helmet fits. So you'll notice last year versus this year, helmets sit up a lot higher. They're tilted. They made them bigger, so they look more like what players are wearing in real life. Last year they sat too low, too far back, almost made them look like they had no neck. And the same goes for Road to Glory. You can really see it here, how these popular helmets fit last year, sitting low, not tilted forward, looking a little bit too small. They did a lot of good work here. You'll notice even body sizing, pad size, they kind of lowered that, made them look more like real life players. The main menu also got a nice overhaul this year. I really like it with the stuff going on the right, kind of just some creative stuff there. Also that you can access everything from the main menu screen versus having to tab over, which is nice. And when you click into certain things in the menu screen, there's some other nice little, you know, kind of details there that are kind of hidden behind the screen. So I think it's just cool. I think they actually got really creative with the menu and the UI this year, and I really do appreciate that. And speaking of that, we've got to look at Dynasty. So Dynasty, the UI as a whole, not really much different. They did kind of dress it up a little bit more this year, showing players and stuff instead of just the coach. There's a little bit more info that you can access, but the overall UI is the same. However, the thing that really makes it different is the blueprint system, which is now kind of its own menu within itself inside of Dynasty, where you manage your staff, your coaches, your facilities, your players, your NIL, all that stuff. So it's definitely kind of a big overhaul there for Dynasty, but the UI in itself is about the same, just dressed up a little bit. But like I said, within that UI, you have this whole new system now, which is really nice. So just kind of showing you the side by side of last year versus this year inside of Dynasty. Now, you got to see some of the little details in this video, but the presentation as a whole got a really big upgrade this year in a lot of different areas. And if you want to see all of those details, make sure to check out this video right here on the screen.